Yeah, welcome in the audience to the program, and it's a pleasure to welcome to the program a guest we've had in the past. His name is E Gim, and he's billed himself here now at this particular moment in the evolution of his thinking as a quantum mechanic, which is, and maybe going to be explained, the juxtaposition of these words, but S.E., welcome very, very much to conversation once again.
Thank you very much.
And as we've done in the past perhaps, but it's been some time, maybe you could share with us your background, where you were born and raised, some of your education, and then we'll get thinking about some of your systems thinking along design levels and so forth. But where you were born and raised, a little of your own personal background, if you could share it with the audience.
Sure.
And try to speak up.
Okay. I grew up in the States. And my parents were overseas.
Korea, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Seoul.
Seoul, yeah. I know.
South Korea. And I now live in New York.
Yeah, yeah.
I like to travel a lot.
You have traveled a lot.
Sure.
You go back and forth quite a bit, and you have
Sure.
family interest there and that sort of thing. You still have some considerable family ties back in Korea, I guess, right?
I've been on my own for a while, or physically.
Yeah.
But yes, I do go back and forth a lot.
And you've done a great deal of thinking about, well, you're being billed on this program as a quantum mechanic, which I think is kind of an interesting title. You've been interested in large issues, and you've also help me, we get it straight and so on. You've been interested in things at a level of design and questions of physics, and you've done a couple of projects that you've managed to get a patent in terms of your ability to deal with the real world. So some of your background and how you came to be interested in, let's say, design and the physics of the universe and so forth. Was that done through university training, or was that done autodidactically on your own curiosity? Or because you've got a very interesting, comprehensive take on the universe and so forth. So maybe you could share some of how you gained the educational view of the universe that you do have.
Well, our apparent civilization enables us the space-time contemplation. So I spent a lot of time autodidactically studying metaphysics and metabolism, materiality, sort of metaphysical epistemology, maybe.
Metaphysical epistemology. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And as you say often, and I've heard that the system transgressing material scarcity by transcendental metaphysic liberty, negating ambiguous profanity by true enlightenment systemization. And I've...
That's a mouthful, what you just said.
Sure, I was trying
to...
No,
that's all right, yeah, because I know you're thinking in very huge patterns about huge questions that are complex. I understand that, yeah, right. No, I know that to be a fact, yeah. And you're interested in metaphysics, you're interested in the universe writ large, or in very large terms, and questions of human purpose and other issues that are transcendent to, let's say, the news and that sort of thing as we normally think in terms of the human condition, right?
Yes, I think there's a lot to be done here in realizing the paradigm and appreciating, cherishing gratitude as in divine nurture.
Yeah. Have you studied a good deal of the cosmology and the religious Buddhism, Zen, Christianity, or the larger spiritual traditions, or spent some considerable time in contemplation of that?
Yeah, I still try to figure it out.
Yeah, I think we all are, really, in a sense. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Wondering design in design.
Exactly, yeah.
Yet, I think science was a major foundation or a pillar where to brace myself at times of wander.
Yeah, or confusion or groping, yeah, yeah. So you've put a considerable amount of attention not only to metaphysics or something, but to physics and to scientific development and thought. Yeah?
Maybe more so general.
More scientifically
generally.
inclined? Yeah, generally than the others. But you do have an appreciation of the spiritual traditions that have evolved over time.
Sure.
Okay, I think that's probably wise to be able to take that into account. And you're also very interested in design. You're also very interested in design at a quantum level and at a level that has meaning. And you're also, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that is looking for a very large pattern of understanding in terms of evolution and the development of culture, human culture, within the larger context of the universe, right?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I am very interested in design. As we thrive or perish in the environments we caress.
That we what?
That we thrive or perish in environments we create.
That we create.
Caress.
Yeah. Yeah, and in that you have some, as you understand, we've had talks over the years and everything, but you have an appreciation of, like for instance myself, I really have a great admiration for the person of Buckminster Fuller, who was a comprehensive, he called himself, for most of his life, he was in a similar situation, I might suggest, he was in a situation similar to you. He had had a very difficult time when he was a young man. When he was about 27, he had failed at a lot of entrepreneurial things. He was very despondent, and then he made a contract with himself thinking 50 years into the future, rather than just thinking about the news that it was developing. And then he developed a concept of anticipatory design science. That is, you're thinking in terms of, rather than thinking, let's just say one vector of thinking, instead of exorcising people to be good, he said, let's build artifacts or build technological systems that are based on the natural patterns that we can discern in nature and in the environment and so forth, and then build build artifacts, he called them, or design functions that would be able to make the good come out through good design. And his famous geodesic dome was the most efficient way to enclose space, which is the beginning of architecture and so forth. And then, but he had that kind of a view. So he was looking at the larger patterns, and throughout much of his life, he probably wasn't much of his life, he would be doing things and then developing technologies that were useful. And he developed a couple of terms. He said ephemeralization is doing more with less through good design. One thing he anticipated was the incredible communications, for instance, that were coming. I mean, we didn't have transistors. We didn't have the integrated circuit. We had to develop all these things that were coming 50 years out. And he was developing, and that like the computer and the integrated circuit and the chip that came, microprocessors that came, they bring exponential increase in capability. And it used to be, as you probably, you know well, a computer the size of this studio full of vacuum tubes in order to produce 2 megabytes of, or 2 kilobytes of memory or something. Then it just went more and more, Moore's law, and smaller and smaller and smaller, but more and more effective in terms of the environment. He had that kind of a long-term perspective, and he always had it based upon understanding the universe in broad general terms. So it was a little bit difficult to go in that, because most people are interested in next week or something, you know. I think you've got some, if I may, I'm not sure, but it seems to me you've got a large view of things that sees qualitative. You call yourself quantum mechanic, but with this quantum, you know, one-step quantitative thing, but you also are feeling that we live in a time of qualitative transformation, of fundamental change in a way that is unique to this time. He saw it that way as well, and there are others. And the Zeitgeist movement that you're familiar with sees things that way, and that we may live in a time of qualitative transformation as we take into account the knowledge that's now coming to us in the modern experience. I'm putting words in your mouth, but it seems to me I've gleaned that from you, from conversations we've had. You have a very large look at communication and other issues that can be facilitated, the communication between people, and even you think of facilitating communication with the other creatures, the other animals, and this kind of thing. You've got a very large pattern of thinking along design levels in terms of the understanding of the universe. Is any of that ring true to you in your own thinking?
Sure, I think.
Okay. It's a mouthful, but true. Yeah, right, okay. Yeah. Sorry.
In having life support,
yes.
I think we find ourselves in a paradigm where greater communication deriving greater good could be achieved. And in tackling that problem conceptually, I had designed a communication system creator. It is called
communication systems. Go ahead. I'm sorry. What?
It is called CCPU.
CCPU. What does that stand for?
It stands for Central Communication Processing Unit.
Okay.
And it experimentally explores in singularity that humanity could generously provide communication systems to all entities of our world.
All entities of our world?
Sure.
And even into universal patterns of the universe itself?
Well,
perhaps.
Perhaps.
Yeah, right, okay.
I guess it does involve advancements in metaphysics and biology, cognitive sciences, natural languages, and computer science.
Okay.
That a man could communicate with a machine just as he could talk to a bird or creatures, whales, simply by defining the source and the target ID, and to communicate, thereby learning and teaching amongst all things, and to have a comprehensive go about to true liberty and independence a truly liberal independence where creation in space-time is rather free.
Is rather free, yeah. And among the creatures and also among the various components of the human family itself also.
Sure.
Yeah.
In relating to what you've said, cosmology,
Yeah.
or sort of in a cosmic metaphysics superimposition, that we study metaphysics and biology.
Yeah.
And
that we're learning all the time more. I mean, isn't it amazing, the Watson and Crick, and decoding the genome and decoding DNA. I mean, the understanding that's emerging in this time frame is just absolutely staggering, it seems to me, in terms of our understanding things in a scientifically validatable pattern. And you're thinking in terms of communications. I wonder if we could just go off on that for a second, because I know I've talked to you about it on a number of occasions. It gets a little bit abstract, but one of the things I know that you are interested in, among many others, with this universal system, a universal system of communication. Okay, that's getting with the creatures, or even with the, you know, the all of the biosphere. I mean, it gets very
sure,
huge.
and robots and machines as well.
Well, all right, very good, because that's all coming to be. Those are all extensions. Those human artifacts are extensions of our consciousness. That's part of an evolutionary process. But among other things, and one that was interesting to me, and you can set me straight whether I'm off base on this, but this would be something you have been interested, and set me straight. Maybe I'm wrong. And maybe this is one little part of your overall communication, like writing the DNA of the universe or something of that sort of thing. Language. We have, I think it's something like still about 5,000 languages that human beings speak. And it's very dismaying to many people, because many of the languages that of Aboriginal peoples that have been moving around the world and so forth are disappearing, and they're being, in a certain sense, gobbled up by some universal language extension, like, say, English. Some people say the world, the internet's now all in English, and things are in English, and that was an imperial power that came out of, you know, evolution, political and so on. But that there are all these languages, and that there would be the possibility, again, set me straight, that by taking the incredible nuance, if I understand it, again, I'm really qualifying all this because I don't have a full understanding, but the incredible variety of the color spectrum, where you could get 1,000,000 shades of yellow, 1,000,000 shades of orange, 1,000,000 shades, that the spectrum of the color spectrum that we have understanding of and so forth could be used in a certain sense as a template, if that's the right term, in the design sense, for having an effective system whereby we could autonomically have a device that would be able to autonomically, in real time, translate the various languages of the world, one into the other or one into all, so that there could be universal getting over of the language barrier of the people of the world through a design of a thing where you would speak, let's say, in Korean, and it would come out in English, or you would speak in Italian and it would come out in German, or Ashkenazi, or whatever, the different things. Is there anything, is that part of your thinking, or am I off base on that, or what do you think of the possibility? It would be magnificent if we could have a device where we could speak and it would be translated immediately in real time back and forth into Swahili or the other language, and get over the language barrier. That would be one huge jump for the unity of mankind, and perhaps save some of the languages that are dying out, particularly some of the Aboriginal peoples and so forth. I don't know, am I off base on that, or is that part of what you're thinking
Sure.
of? Yeah. Maybe you could talk about it a little bit.
Sure. The project encompasses general mean creation and translation processes that that humans, any human being on Earth, could communicate to all other entities. Given
other entities, or are you talking now within the human species?
well, humans, animals, and machines.
Well, animals and machines is another level
Sure.
of a larger context, but in terms of just the languages of Homo sapiens that have
Okay.
evolved. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
It
okay.
integrates.
That's huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in response to what you've said about the human languages, that Einstein made a comment
Yeah.
in a speech he gave about, I think, rather more paradoxical
Yeah.
statement that current languages were made by the best brains of all time and all places.
Uh-huh.
So this project initiates or establishes a foundation where we can truly create and translate what we mean.
Use and translate without what we do have, if I may, and forgive my ignorance because I'm not a design person, but we do have Google Translate, you know, but what they do is you go and you translate and it goes through the print process. But what is possible is to do it in real time so that it would be you know, an oral process by which I'm speaking to you and let's suppose you have not one word of English, I have not one word of Korean. I'm talking to you in English and you're getting it in your consciousness in Korean so that you would know, even nuanced and poetic, apparently. They could get philosophical concepts that would be translating it across the barriers of communication between the various peoples that make up all the, do you understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
That is something that, because it's increasing, it's qualitatively, and I'm staggered by the fact what a boon to humanity, or would it be? I think it would be to humanity to cross that barrier of language, both particularly when you get into understanding at a deep level one another, which is something we would want dearly to have be characteristic of the peoples of the world, so they could stop taking up arms against each other, if nothing else, as
Sure.
they have been doing. But okay, I'm sorry, but and that's something that you're actually thinking in terms of the design parameters of.
Well, it seems to be a major issue for correction.
It's yes, yeah, communicating, yeah.
And in respective divine nurture.
Of what?
Of divine nurture.
Divine nurture.
Sure. Seems to me that we are often a part of a systematic operation that is that its predefined motivation is tackling another or tackling each other, rather at times more so than tackling the unknown or a problem.
Yeah, misunderstanding.
Sure,
yeah,
and I wonder.
And vested interests one against the other. Again, back to an original theme, that it was all being done within a condition of assumed scarcity of the ability to have understanding or communication or material sustenance even for the peoples of the world within an ecological context that might be the promise of the moment that as we begin to look ahead. Yeah.
In respective now
yes.
And just true being,
Mm-hmm.
I find it difficult. I mean, I think it takes time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
For humans, for us to recognize the problems that we are a part of, the problems that that condition us.
Mm-hmm.
but I find it really unnecessary and somewhat hindered by a systematic motivation where people are trying to steal, people are trying to lie, and sort of redundant or unnecessary fakery and fallacy.
Of which there seems to be a great deal.
Sure,
Yeah.
maybe more than what is truly necessary.
Particularly given the new circumstance of evolutionary progress, if that's the right term, of our understanding of things and our technological ability to extend our consciousness through technology and create a world other than in an Eden-like sense, is the way in which we have probably engaged the environment, the outer environment, throughout most of our tenure here on Earth. We're coming to a new moment, maybe quantitative, what do they call it, punctuated equilibrium in evolutionary terms, in terms of the broader cosmos. Perhaps, something along those lines, right? If you understand. But this thing with the languages is something that you're engaged with, and it involves that. And then I heard you say not only could we have a communication system among the peoples of the world, but we are embedded within a larger ecological order, so that there could be real communication between human beings and the creatures, and including all of the life forms that are there. There could be a, if I'm getting, you're reaching for something, what'd you call it, CC something, C. Yeah, maybe you could get into that, what you're thinking of, because it gets into beyond just the Homo sapiens species itself, yeah. What did you call that again, CC something?
The project at hand is a CCPU. It stands for Central Communication Processing Unit, and it addresses communication to synergetic and metaphysic superimposition upon the world, to teach and learn from all entities what we may be able to. And it empowers the user by giving the capability to communicate or accessing the database of every other entity to the best of liberty and
best of capability?
Best of capabilities.
Which is expanding all the time at a level that is inchoate.
Sure.
It's capability as opposed to the practical reality perceived.
It postulates that compassionate sympathy is
empathy.
Empathy, or sympathy is a passionate empathy. That it is actually together. That when we look at the prospect of resolutions from systematic operation, that there's reason for goodness. That I think when that I believe a core derivative of zeal, hatred, or murder is rather something that may be negative to our sustained longevity and greater generation. I mean, to have more, not only of technical capabilities, but our total capability as a whole.
Yeah, the total, you also include appreciation of the metaphysical or larger issues that are the spiritual issues and so forth, but it could be argued or it could be dealt with in terms of just materialistically understanding this idea of transcending scarcity, that there could be, through good design, a world where the full potential of every single human being, again, very importantly, within a new understanding of an ecological context in which we're all embedded, could be the promise of the time in which we live now, that hasn't been available to us throughout 200,000 years, apparently, from the scientific understanding of mankind's tenure on Earth. Can you understand? That's the way sort of see what you're saying.
Sure.
Yeah.
In believing,
Yeah.
In believing that yesterday was for today, and today is for tomorrow. And divine nurture, ordering, or order. That and sort of on that paradigm, it seems that that there's a whole lot of
design challenges.
Design challenges, or unnecessary profanities that is rather against divine nurturing and generating greater overcoming wealth of the spirit, of the mind, of the body, and the material resources and resourcing.
Outside of that, everything's status quo. I'm making a joke, son. I mean, you got it very huge cosmic take on that. Among other things, if I may, Jim, Fuller had the idea. He said what we need. This is at a materialistic level. Let's just say, you keep saying divine what? Divine.
Well, divine nurture.
Divine nurture.
It surely is a beautiful day.
Yeah. Well, it happens, but there's also days when it's horrible, you know. Or
well,
at the North Pole, it's pretty cold at the moment.
Well, in talking to you, I really think that it's a lot more beauty than any other.
Oh, okay. Well, but anyway, he would look at it and he would say, we're coming to where every day comes over another revolution over the transom in terms of understanding things intellectually and all of that. And he said, what we really need, and yet there's all this tunnel vision, nationalism, and differentiation and dialectic between interest groups, and people are telling intellectual community is divided up into very highly specialized thoughts patterns, and the bureaucratic structure of the universe, economically and otherwise, or the country and the world, is all divided down into specialized kind of things. But he said, what we really needed in terms of getting toward what you're thinking about, he used the term, what we don't have is a comprehensive understanding of let's say the planet Earth and all the biosphere, including humanity, it is comparable to what would be like an operating manual for spaceship Earth. What are the parameters of the overall context in which you're going on? We don't have a comprehensive overview of that, and we should have that developed. He tried to do it with what they call World Game, where they put together understandings of our capability, and one of the major premises he had throughout his life was that we were coming to a point of transcendence of the context out of which all of human institutions had evolved. It's like in evolution. We can understand evolution, the evolution of from the Big Bang, 13.7 billion years ago, and then we get 4.5 billion years ago the Earth formed, and then we get life started maybe through 3.8 billion years ago, the constituents of RNA that began evolution, and then we get the evolutionary process and all the creatures, both flora and fauna, and then we finally get up the hominoid line. 4 to 7 million years ago, we had Australopithecine. That's steady state, sometimes for millennia, millions of years involved. And then you have steady state, and then there comes a qualitative transformation. It's called punctuated equilibrium, and the new appears, a new thing up the evolutionary line. And so then it's best we understand about 1.5 million years ago, out of Homo Australopithecine, that would be Lucy and the work of Leakey's and so forth, in the Olduvai Gorge, is all in Africa. There came a new species called Homo habilis that emerged, and then that was there, and then about only 200,000 years ago, it's just an eye blink, that the Homo sapiens species appeared. with a self-reflective consciousness and so forth. So it's just an enabling. And now we've come to a point where we have a unique capability to extend our consciousness through tools and technology and make the world other than in an Eden-like sense was the way you encountered the environment when we were through history. So that we may be coming to a time where measuring the operating manual for Spaceship Earth, the capability that's emerging. Because the capability, electricity, Ben Franklin knew about, but it had to be made available through Edison and through Tesla and this kind of, so there's a thing. And then the microprocessor had to have the transistor, and there had to be an evolutionary process of steady state of the old environment out of which we're emerging. And then there comes a time of qualitative transformation, not quantitative, historical, but qualitative, and that's called punctuated. You may be coming into a new condition in universe in an evolutionary sense, including the whole of the biosphere and everything that would relate us to the universe at a level transcendent to what we've been throughout the whole of the evolutionary process itself. It's hard to think that we could be living in a time of that kind of a transformation. Or maybe I'm off base or I'm rambling on, but do you understand? And your thing, CCP, wanting to have a communication thing, is really part of that promise of the capability, because that capability is increasing monumentally every day. It's increasing all the time, and it's leading to a point where we could either destroy the whole damned Homo sapiens species with weapons, or we could liberate in a new way. You call divine nurture. That would be like that would be a liberated thing where everybody realizes their full potential. And like an orchestra, there's a resonancy, a synergistic resonancy that will interaccommodate us to universe transcendent to what we've been throughout the human experience or something. We could live in that kind of a time. Is that going off the deep end or something? Or is that a statement that could make one be locked up in a loony bin?
Well, it's sure.
You understand?
Sure.
But you seem to be toying with that kind of a thought pattern, or working with that kind of a thought pattern that is somewhat along those lines. Yeah.
Well, your voice resonate and and definitely makes a lot of sense.
To you?
Sure. In recognizing the expansive multitude of general specializations or singularity exploration that mutually interaccommodative cooperation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I think as present paradigm is experimenting in institutional academia.
Institutional academia.
Institutions of academia. And it seems to me that today we find ourselves in a apparent paradigm where we are the abundance of goods, whether it's intellectual property or machine goods or farmed agriculture, that we have the capability in space and time to contemplate and to utilize or consummate and compose those goods to truly provide each other
in a new way,
in a peaceful in a peaceful and independent liberty.
Yeah, liberty, fulfillment on a scale that, rather than it being just a few that might be able to, let's just say materialistically at the beginning, live well. It's always been a few people would run everything through the empires and then the kings of England, and then now it's the bankers and that, and you have a small group that runs everything, and the people more or less are like serfs.
Well, I guess that may be.
Has been, and one thing, James Joyce had, the great writer, poet, had a Daedalus say, history is a nightmare, one could add, of injustice, or unfulfillment, maybe would be a better term, but a nightmare from which we're attempting to awaken. And we may be awakening from a historical context that, you understand, that kind of a thing? Does that make any sense?
Sure. I mean, it seems really incredible.
Yeah, to be in that generation. You could have been born in the 6th century, and it takes forever to invent a tack.
Yeah.
And now, every day, it's coming like a quickening in a pregnancy.
Sure.
Yeah. But your work is along those lines, and that's what your thinking is. I might just say, I'm not sure if we mentioned, if we did, steer me away, but you did manage to, you had, among other things, when you were younger, you designed a lighting system that you did manage to get through the arduous process of, with the United States government or something like that, of getting a patent for, which had unique properties and everything, emerging properties, and so you're not exactly just an idealistic, thought thing, but you know how to have some relationship to the material world and the political and the context and economic context by which the world operates as well as being philosophically grounded, right?
Sure, I hope so.
Truly. Yeah, and you worked that out. That was pretty complicated, was it not?
Well, yes, and lately I think so.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was the thing that applied earlier in your life and that, but you have this larger vision always that's been driving you, I would surmise from our talks and that. This, again, what is it?
CCPU. It's a Central Communication Processing Unit.
Yeah, maybe you could spell it out a little bit, yeah.
Central Communication Processing Unit.
Mm-hmm.
That
cyber thing?
Yeah, basically, in sharing true value, to synergetic, consummate, composing synergetic consummation that we can derive at greater good, evermore, in between all entities that are that are learning and teaching each other, maybe more comprehensively approaching the issue of consummation and transcendence. Basically, the project is to empower the user to communicate with every entity, and the project corpus endeavors to integrate all corporas, including natural languages, including
natural languages as well as written language,
humans,
or spoken language.
Yeah, humans and animals.
Ecology.
In nature.
The structure down to molecular, up to the, okay.
Well, the fundamental basis being very, at the core, the sciences such as physics and chemistry and such. That our experience, and also machines and devices, and the corpus in the process of creating and translating new communication systems that may transcend the languages that humans subjectively practice as of now, that are not definably made by the best brains of all time.
Well, that would be, I mean, I. Yeah. Well, yeah, that would be. I mean, I. Yeah. Well, yeah, that would be. I mean, I. Yeah. Well, yeah, that would be. I mean, I. Yeah. Well, yeah, that would be. I mean, I. Yeah. Well, yeah, that would be. I mean, I. Yeah. Well, yeah, that would be. Well, yeah, that would be. That would be, it would be like reaching for the DNA of the planet in a certain kind of sense, and it's becoming available to us now. And it's like we could understand all these processes better. Like what creates the impetus toward what is called in evolution, what creates the impetus for what's called, Eldridge, Niles Eldridge and Stephen Jay Gould called punctuated equilibrium, where the new appears out of the steady state condition that was evolved from and then to. So like we appeared 200,000 years ago, which is, that kind of thing. So we would want to understand the processes by which the universe works in a new enlightened way. I think I heard you say in a new enlightenment or a new understanding that's characteristic of our time. But we have all these institutions that are, one of the design challenges might be, for instance, political, or just say even in the realm of economics, or in the realm of the effective allowing for the maximum productive capability within an ecological ephemeralizing world of being able to do more with less, which is characteristic of good design. We would design the political system and the economic system that we have, which seems to be inadequate to being able to address the maximization of each individual member of world society in terms of just keeping them in a condition of rather like serfs on a feudal estate, where the production, goods, services, and so forth, is all increasingly being done by mechanization and by extended technology that is all owned by a tiny plutocratic class. It's like like the royal houses or something. And so a design thing in terms of the operation of the qualitative transformation of the reality at the level of capability is becoming manifest. And that we would need a design of all of our institutions, educational institutions. Do you understand? It's just a massive qualitative transformation. That your CCCPU, is that what you call it? Sounds would be thinking to be utilized to give the design parameters for a new way of organizing the entire world.
Well, it's systematically...
it may be what's called for, yeah.
Well, it's systematically ventures to verify and validate the testament, and really simplifying the somewhat arbitrary, ambiguous, and even often artificial, somewhat in complete contradiction to our systemization principles. That often when we systemize something, it's to drive at greater good or more, and to provide what one man cannot consume to others in a greater experience of our planetary existence.
Yeah, or some of that energy is directed toward what they call reifying. You're familiar with reifying is reestablish things that are in place in order to represent the interests of what is called special interest elements. Institutions, our architecture, our structure of institutions and all that has been based within a condition that's being qualitatively transformed. You understand? The institutions, so the parameters are there to I don't want to use the analogy like mafia dons or something fighting for territory, or the North Side gang against the South Side gang, or something of that sort, rather than something that's truly collective and understanding the potential. It's like latent heat. I mean, a tornado, there's latent heat. It's not measured in terms of the temperature that is released with a tornado, which is tremendous. It's latent. It's a capability. We have a capability that our institutions simply cannot imagine, because they've all been formulated with long traditional systems of what are, in terms of the future, are primitive in terms of of history. And it might make also possible, instead of having a dialectical materialism where you overthrow the bad guys, and it's all people saying they're bad, we're good, we're good, that kind of thing. We could be something where it could be inclusive of the masses of the people, and let the people really realize the full potential of their given genetic capability to realize their own being in a liberated way, rather than a quasi-slave kind of condition that they've had to submit to the local political authorities, whether throughout all of history, that nightmare. They could realize that, and that would be something that would be developed. But then you could also, in ecology, it had to be based ecologically. Again, we're having understanding of that. But then it would also be something that would be so comprehensively appropriate to the evolution of universal consciousness that it would be able to be not only liberating of the body, the corpus, the whole of the system, but it could also be including those who are responsible for the outdated institutions, which they're busy trying to reify against the competition from somebody else, which Don is going to run. The competition there, it could include those who are responsible for the outdated institutions with some enlightenment, so that everybody would be included in a synergistic resonancy, that rather than overthrowing the bad guys. If you can understand, do you think we could include people who are responsible for outdated institutions, if they could but see have something, maybe through a what do you call it, a scenario kind of thing of what that new reality emerging was. They could understand it, so they could go along with it also, rather than fight the trend that is emerging through evolutionary process. So everybody could win, in a sense. You wouldn't have to have winners and losers. It would be something that everybody could appreciate. That would be the ultimate challenge, it would seem to me, or something along the lines of the communication thing you're trying to develop. Can you understand, or what do you think?
Well,
But these weapon systems, I swear to God, they are species lethal. And they're going to protect their interests by the traditional thing of making war and killing people in order to fight for their territory, their turf or something, rather than there be an alternative, which could be, we can either liberate the entire Homo sapien species and the ecology, or we can annihilate the Homo sapien species, which we haven't been able to do in both cases until about the year 1970, the time in which we were both born. Right? So there's going to have to be some overarching communications capability that will be emerging, and along the lines of what you're doing is something that should be well investigated and given a hearing.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Which it just has been.
Well, it seems that amongst all the complexities that that is abundant in the environment, seems somewhat simple. That I believe in order. I believe in true order in nature,
Mm-hmm.
as in a cosmological sense,
Mm-hmm.
and in having the capability to respect truth, and to believe in inner accommodation, as in liberty, and and then to have the independence to go and sort of integrate with the society. I think maybe it can be simple that people can judge a sort of in a hierarchy, in a hierarchical order that is about truth, that is about true,
yeah,
and metaphysic
emerging properties, to use some cyber language.
Yeah, communication. I mean that amongst all the fields that, and to judge and to have so that the people could judge for themselves, and believe that that true metaphysics superimposes that which is other, and I mean I'm I have genuine love for science, and true spiritual arts.
And they may both coexist.
Sure. Yeah. Yet I do think that there is order in terms of, I mean, maybe it's not an order of material, quantity or something like that, but that there needs to be, that they would need to recognize a certain order for true peace and, in the longer duration of our experience.
Yeah, the longer duration of our experience. This may be that great time that has been, the prophets of old have predicated that jump up time of liberation at the end of, in a certain sense, of a process, like a pregnancy's 9 months in a human being. It's not 10 months, it's not 8, it's not 3 months, it's 10, so that we may be matured to a certain point of qualitative transformation to bring about a new condition. So anyway, thank you. I'm sorry, we've run out of time. I can't believe it.
Well, to get in a
goes fast when you're having fun.
To get in a good critical shot.
Yeah.
For the time being, as best as I can. God bless us. True. To heaven and earth. And thank you very much. I hope next time we can have a discussion or interview in regards to spiritual.
Well, we want to encompass that. Yeah, okay. It's been your pleasure to have. Sorry, we run out of time. One of the tyrannies is time. You get linked by time or caught by time. And it's been E Gim. And thanks a lot for coming in, sharing these thoughts. And we invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again tomorrow. That's it for now. Thanks very much. And so good night until... thanks a lot for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Beginning of... we'll have to keep talking like this.
Sure.
So. Okay, thank you. So, kind of a big subject. You're working in a very large...